You're listening to the Punisher Waterfowls, the Union 0430 podcast.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Got a special guest with me today. I got my buddy Sean Weaver here. They call him, as I heard recently, the South Dakota Duck Commander. And I heard that I heard that on another podcast. Like, I was doing some research and I was listening to the Kifferoo cast with Aaron Snyder there. So way back before my first time I hurt my shoulder, I was really big into bow hunting, and so I really followed this Aaron Snyder guy and what he was doing. So now that he's got a podcast, I really like it. And then I was like, man, this dude's a traditional bow hunter and he has like a backpack company. Why is Sean Weaver on this podcast? And it's probably one of my favorite duck hunting podcasts I've heard, and for all the wrong reasons, right? Like, how did that come about?
Well, what you probably liked is Aaron's super in-depth knowledge of all the species of ducks as he sits there reading off a Google list.
Yeah, he read off the Google list and he's like, greater something, lesser something, mute swan. Those things are probably quiet. And I'm going, this is the greatest podcast I've ever heard, right? Like, but it actually brought into light a lot of new hunters these days are like, they're here in Ontario, right? Like, you've got your Barrow's Goldeneye is a limit, and they're like, oh shit, I don't want to hit one of those and get in trouble if I hit two of them or whatever. And it can be daunting looking at all this. Like, you're a deer hunter, you look at your tag, it says you could shoot an antlered deer or an antlerless deer. All right, I know what a deer looks like, but with ducks, it can be a bit daunting. Like, that podcast itself brought out a lot of questions on how do we get more new hunters in, especially with the species. And you talked a lot about that.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I remember the first time I ever shot a hen bluebill, right? And I didn't know if it was a hen bluebill, a hen redhead, or a hen ringneck. Like, I was so new to it still, right? I was probably like, I'd guess 15, and I didn't, it's like a diver female, but like, you don't really know that much more than that. And it's super daunting for someone new to it. You get certain species that are really hard. And then you talk about even when it is that new hunters tend to hunt, right? They tend to hunt early season when everything's a brown duck anyway.
Yeah.
Like, man, where you're at.
Yeah.
You guys starting in September, everything's brown. Yeah. Like, everything. Luckily, your guys' limits are a little bit more liberal, so there's a little more wiggle room there. But man, if you're a new hunter and you're shooting at first light early in the season, all of a sudden you shoot two hen pintails, like, there you go, you're already toast. And so I think, man, I've just talked with friends and talked about a lot of different ways we can better duck ID. I think overall it just brings about the point how important it is to mentor new hunters. I try my best to hunt with a lot of new hunters every year. Specifically people that maybe have other hunting or fishing experience, but don't actually just waterfowl hunt. Cause that learning curve gets accelerated so much if you can have someone there with you that just definitively says, like, that's a hen pintail. I've thought about this before, just starting a duck ID Facebook group where new hunters can just or an Instagram page or whatever, new hunters can just send a picture while they're in the field and crowdsource the knowledge of, like, what is that, right? Yeah. Because when you're in the heat of the hunt, you need to know within like a minute or two what you shot.
But like, therein lies, like, it's almost hard to identify it afterwards. Like, some people will post a picture and it's just like, buddy, you just shot a grebe, and it's like that. You can't shoot those. Or like, it's early teal season and they're shooting. We were talking about it a couple weeks ago where, early teal season, you'll get the odd wood duck come in. Well, it's just a mullet teal, right? Like, that, what do you say, and it is very hard to learn beforehand, right? And now you get to the point where you can see these birds in the air and you're just like, okay, there's a flock of whatever coming, and then
Yeah. So I've actually been, so South Dakota and Nebraska did a tiered license system, or were test running a tiered license system where new hunters could select that their license, instead of it, sorry, one second.
no.
Someone was trying to call me. Instead of you being able to shoot 6 ducks and your limit be, 1 pintail or 4 mallards or whatever it may be, in your respective flyway, it's just 3 ducks, any species, any sex. And I was critical of it at first and still have my questions about it, with specifically in relation to canvasbacks and pintails, right? Like there's certain areas, let's say Northeast Iowa, where on the Mississippi River, they can, like, that's the place to shoot canvasbacks, right? It's like Pool 8 of the Mississippi. Well, I wouldn't want people to be able to go select their tier 3 license to hunt there to shoot 3 canvasbacks person. I don't like that gaming of the system mentality. But now somewhere like Nebraska, where you're making the argument that it's just a new hunter going out and they don't know what they're shooting at in the early season, so you don't want them to get over bagging on pintails or whatever.
Mhm.
I like that idea. I just don't like the idea of that someone could game it to shoot the wrong, or like to shoot more of pintails or more of canvasbacks,
Yeah.
rather than it be a duck ID
Yeah.
fix.
Now, when you talk about these tiered licenses, is it like, do they track like, hey, you can't get this 5 years straight in a row? Like your first season, you can get it, or it's not that sophisticated?
No, it's not. It's not that sophisticated. It's just you have one of 2 options, right? You can either just buy the regular license or the tiered license. And yeah, because like, man, there's always a loophole, right? Like, if you said someone could only get it for the first 5 years of hunting, well, what about someone that's always bought a hunting license for 20 years, but they haven't hunted ducks, right?
Mhm.
They were buying it to hunt pheasants or deer or whatever else. So I don't think there's like a fix all on it, other than, I mean, it's a good idea. It's a good idea. I have my questions and critiques of it, but
Mhm.
talking to Aaron and him like expressing so much nerves around, just like duck ID in general, made
Yeah.
me be like, okay, maybe I was too critical of the tiered license system.
Yeah. But then you also hear him talk about like duck hunting is like, it's cold and miserable and wet and rainy, and I'm thinking, man, I'll take that any day versus hauling my ass up a mountain, shooting an elk, and then carrying that bastard down, right? Like, it's different perspectives on what you enjoy, and I think it's kind of like what kind of clicks with you, and where your heart is at the time, right? And that comes back to mentorship as well, right?
Yeah, man. It comes back to what clicks for you. It also just comes down to like misnomers and misconceptions. Like one of, like, I would argue my favorite reason to snow goose hunt is the meat, literally, because it's my main protein source all year. I haven't bought any kind of protein in several months. The last thing I bought was some nice Hutterite steaks. And like, other than that, I pretty much eat snow goose, duck, Canada goose, or pork from our family farm, like every day. And so for me, snow goose season is that time that I I fill my freezer, right?
Mhm.
I can go in a week, get several hundred snows that gives me hundreds of pounds of like pretty much a beef replacement protein for me,
Yeah.
or venison replacement protein for me every year. But then there's people, for example, like Aaron, or other, like, let's say big game hunters that have never hunted snow geese, never ate or cooked snow goose. Their whole conception of snow geese is that they're awful eating. Like, that's just the thing you hear, right?
Yeah.
And so they're like, why would you want to go hunt snow geese in the cold and the wind and the rain and the mud? Why would you want to go do that? That sounds miserable. when I can go on one elk hunt in beautiful country and fill my freezer. I'm like, well, I'm doing the same thing. I'm filling my freezer too with great protein.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, do you enjoy what you're eating, right? Like even me, when I drive, Ontario's huge, right? So when I drive to a
Yeah.
different spot in Ontario to hunt, and there's like, I'll just use bluebill for example. Like we don't get a lot of them here, but when I go to one spot in Ontario, it's like, we can get a couple and we'll put them in the pepperette pile. And then you go to a different spot in Ontario and they're like, oh, those are the best to eat. Like it's all just kind of like where you are and what you like to eat, right? But
Yeah, and I think in general, like we had this loss in North America overall. We had a loss of understanding the value of waterfowl culinarily. You know, 100 years ago, canvasback was the fanciest thing you could buy at a restaurant. And now people are like, ew, diver duck. It's like, wait, hold on. 100 years ago, that was the delicacy.
yeah,
That was the thing people paid $120 a plate to eat. And well, adjusted for inflation. And you know, it's like that I think we had this period in time where less people were eating waterfowl because it wasn't market accessible anymore. And you also kind of went through like the whole TV dinner era of the 50s and the 60s after
yeah,
World War II. And people just kind of lost that culinary knowledge of waterfowl because hell, I've had the same like opinion of golden eyes for forever. Like, ooh, fish eating duck, gross, right?
yeah.
And me and Ben O'Brien and Ed Anderson and Casey Levere from Hushin, we were just we were hunting this winter and like shot a couple golden eyes, plucked them and cooked them on the stovetop, like just skin on breast with salt, pepper, seared fat, just like I would do a corn-fed mallard. Dude, it was like it was legitimately good. I'd absolutely say like I could taste there was a different flavor there than the teal we cooked it with. But I mean, generally speaking, like I would have served that to anyone. I would have served that to any duck hunter out there, and they probably been like, "Oh, that's pretty good." And um, if you asked any duck hunter, they'd say like goldeneye's unedible, right? You can't eat goldeneye. It's too gross. It's like, wow. I just ate it. It was really good. So I think we have a lot of misconceptions like that kind of just built into us from other people saying things. And very few people have actually gone and, cooked up goldeneye or merganser or snow goose or whatever it is and really like got the taste profile for themselves.
Now, aside from mergansers, do you think that the flavor of the bird is a regional thing? Like if I shot a bird here versus you in South Dakota, would it be any
Yeah.
different flavor wise? Like I don't think it personally, I haven't traveled much outside of my area. Like Ontario's
Yeah.
huge and I'm poor. So, but to me, I haven't tasted any difference when I shoot one here and when I go to Damien's and I shoot something there.
Totally depends on what it is you're shooting, man. Rob Sawyer, he's a guy from Texas, wrote a book called Texas Market Hunting History. And it's a really good book because of that. Even though the title insinuates it's just about Texas, there's a lot of valuable waterfowl knowledge in that book anyway. And one of the things that book talks about is that there was a different market for canvasbacks. Like there was two commercial canvasback markets. There was one canvasback market that was for ones from water celery areas, Chesapeake Bay, Heron Lake, Minnesota, places that had known quantities of water celery that the canvasbacks could eat, which is pretty much, it's kind of like the canvasbacks eating a wild onion. So you can imagine like onion fed duck would be pretty good. On the contrary, you had a whole separate market for canvasbacks that came from places with no water celery. So like Pamlico Sound, North Carolina, those canvasbacks were said to be eating fish. So they actually got a lower, and then there's like some chef's quotes about the difference in taste. And then there became a whole black market of like people shooting them in fish eating areas and sending them to water celery areas and then repackaging them and selling them as water celery ducks. It's a whole thing. But overall, I do think you get you do get differences regionally. I've heard, now I got to test it for myself because I won't believe it till I've tasted it. But guys that hunt like coastal Washington and Oregon tell me the widgeon out there are just rough. They're like, ooh, they're just fishy. They're gross. They're like brackish water, salt water widgeon, and they're not good. And then I come shoot widgeon in South Dakota, I'm like, these things are freaking great. They got this nice, clean, white fat. They're fat. They're eating a lot of smart wheat and beans and corn. Like, I can get behind widgeon like that. So I do think you get regional differences, but I bet most people don't have an advanced enough palate. Like, they haven't ate enough duck to really know, in most cases.
Yeah. Like, you'd be good to say like, this is a diver versus this is a puddler, let alone like, that's a wood duck, that's a canvas, like the species, right? Yeah.
Right.
But and I think too, like the preparation of some of these meals that some people do, like this, there's a guy here local, he's making all these meals and I'm like, shit, I don't care what kind of duck is in that, I'd eat the shit out of that, right? Like,
right.
And I'm a big dude, I like my food, so prep it up, right?
Yeah, me too, man. Me too.
And I find myself going like, it's the nicest Chinese restaurant, which, speaking of Chinese restaurant, there's not really a lot of nice ones, but to get to a Chinese restaurant that's worth eating at is like 45 minutes away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And I go there, and like the first time we've been there in a few years because of COVID, go there and get some food, and I'm like, shit, I wonder if I could do a duck like this, like, man, and get some of this flavoring on a duck. And that's what I've started getting at, is like, I'm gonna try making a duck like this, and swapping recipes with different animals, so.
Yeah, totally. My brother kind of started getting on a Peking duck kick, and it's like, man, you like put in the effort to get good at cooking duck like that. Or I tell people this all the time. Hank Shaw has he's got a duck l'orange recipe.
Oh yeah.
That, like, I don't care who you are, man. You go throw that duck l'orange sauce on a good, like, fatty duck of any kind, it's gonna be tasty. It's gonna be good. You can serve that to anybody.
Yeah. For those that don't know, Hank Shaw was on the Punisher Waterfowl podcast there, man, almost a year and a half ago. If you haven't checked out his video on just how to cook a simple duck breast, check that out. It's on his YouTube. It basically, like, you're just putting it down and you're just cooking it, and you want it like almost rare. And but you got to watch it and see like how he does it and how he makes sure it doesn't curl up. But check that out. And also, it's Super Bowl day, and we're talking about food, and I am starving.
Yeah, I could go for some duck nachos right now.
Oh Jesus! So,
dude, I will say a lot of people should just do try Mexican recipes with like snow goose and goose. I do like fajitas all the time, and it's so good.
Yeah. So, our geese in general have a reputation for being they call them like greasy and all that shit, right? Like, I've never had a problem eating geese. I cook it and I look at it like a crappy piece of like steak, right? And that's how I prepare it. But a lot of people get that notion that, it's a greasy meat. Do you find that at all? Right? No.
I think, man, like, to me, snow goose is almost like duck, especially if you're getting into juvies. But to me, I'd much rather eat snow goose than Canada goose. Canada goose for me a lot of times is like a low and slow meat. Like just last week I made like pretty much a beef stew, right? Like a vegetable beef stew with Canada goose, because it's like there's a lot of other flavors going on in there. It's a slow cooked meal. The meat isn't the shining piece of the meal, right?
Yeah.
So I like doing things like that with Canada goose, but hell, snow goose, man, all the time. I'll just do it like fast and hot, like a fajita. like a fajita meat, like a skirt steak. It's freaking delicious.
Man,
But no, I don't find it's greasy. Like there's no fat. I mean, see, that's just like another misnomer. I mean, the fat's all in the skin, right? There's no fat in the meat itself. So, it's not really a concern.
No. And I think that some people, they just like, they've never tried it or they've never given it the chance.
Yeah, they just like talking bad about it
it's
because
just like, yeah, my great grandpa told me once and I'm gonna believe it. You know what?
mm-hmm.
Try this stuff. Like it is good.
Man, in a modern society where like getting to go hunting gets more and more expensive, right? And getting to do these things we love, being outside, are so expensive. Man, like you can't get out of a scouting trip now without spending $100 in gas.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, like more and more it becomes necessary for this passion of mine, waterfowl hunting, to serve another purpose, which is fill the freezer.
Yep.
10 years ago, I was not that much of a fill the freezer guy. Like it just happened, right? You had to eat all your ducks. It wasn't a thing I seeked out.
Yeah.
My goal was to go out there and shoot a bunch of greenheads. And then like a byproduct of that was we were a bunch of broke college kids that had a bunch of meat to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Now that has so shifted for me. Now it's like, okay, if I'm going to spend 3 or 4 days to go on a snow goose trip, or go on a duck trip, like I want to bring back as much meat as possible from that trip. Because if I have a good few days of hunting, man, that's week or two of eating.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden now I'm not buying any protein.
Yeah.
And I think that like a lot of waterfowlers would do themselves a lot of good by realizing they can afford their habit a little more by like really taking advantage of that protein and not just being the guy that always wants to give away the duck.
Yeah. And speaking of that too, like there's a whole bunch there that you summed up. And usually when I'm taking a new hunter out and showing them what the passion's about, the meat nowadays is something that I'm talking about secondary, because they're looking at it going, well, you're going to spend $15,000 on a trailer with a full setup and the boat and the whatever, and plus your gun and your shells are costing. You're pretty much paying, if you're a shitty shot like me, you're pretty much paying the same price as meat at the kitchen for a box of shells just to shoot one bird, right?
Right.
And nowadays they're like, well, shit, I can put on my VR headset, still shoot at birds, probably hit more because the thing will up my accuracy on this video game. And then they're going to the store and they're buying the meat anyway. So I like to, the meat part of it for me is it's now become kind of a secondary thing. I'm trying to get people into it based on the camaraderie, like you know what, we're in a blind and we're cooking up some whatever and let's have fun with it. And that's kind of the angle that I've swung to a lot more. It used to be like when I first started, I convinced my wife like, oh yeah, we're going to get all this meat and it's going to be great. And then she doesn't even eat it anyway. So like, so
you got to get on that Hank Shaw level.
Oh man, that guy can cook. Man. Yeah. So now, what other tips would you have for new duck hunters? Like we've talked about, duck identification and kind of knowing your knowing your laws and all that stuff. But it is an expensive hobby to get into. Is there anything
super expensive, man? There's a lot of there's some studies from Fish and Wildlife Service about waterfowlers are in general younger. They spend more days in the field and they have an overall like much higher average income. Like waterfowlers are more dedicated and spend more money and have more money to spend. And that's not speculation. That's it's Fish and Wildlife Service information. So with that being said, like getting into it's an expensive start, right? It's not a cheap thing to start into, but my number one hot tip, and this is coming from a guy that works for a decoy company, right? I work for Lucky Duck. Get on Facebook Marketplace and find some cheap decoys. Like start there by filling out your spread and getting more. I don't, it seems like back in the day, a lot of guys went bigger, right? like get the big Bigfoots, get the big G&H super mags, like
Get
get the
those
big decoys, the battleships, you know? It's
get
like,
those chairs that are shaped like a goose that you can lay inside of, right?
yeah, it was like, yeah, and it was always about get big, big, big. To me, it's about more, you know, have more decoys, allows for more shape of your spreads, more like more natural look. You know, those ducks can see two ducks sitting on the river. They're half a mile up and they see two ducks sitting there and they bomb right to land with them. So get like just more decoys to start with, and don't worry so much about quality if you want to spend the time to paint them yourself. I mean, hell, man, the Mississippi River guys have, and still to this day, they hunt over black milk jugs,
Mhm.
right? They spray paint milk jugs, like
Yeah.
that's the bulk of their spread.
Yeah.
Now that's not to say quality painting and quality coloring and quality looking decoys doesn't matter. It does, but it doesn't matter right away when you start. So get on Facebook Marketplace, find as many cheap decoys as you can, build out your spread. You know, if you're going to be a water hunter, get a canoe. Like, you can always find a cheap canoe on Craigslist somewhere. You know, like, give yourself more opportunity first to be successful, and then worry about getting into quality, right? You don't need to go buy a decoy full of Dakota decoy full bodies right away, or you don't need to buy a $30,000 Excel boat full of motorized Lucky Duck splashers right away. Like, you'll get there, you'll upgrade to there as time goes on, and you get more invested and love it more. But you don't start there.
Yeah.
So get on Marketplace, fill a freaking truck bed full of full of decoys. Get some spinning wing decoys because they're your best attractant, right? Get the Lucky Duck remote kit so that you can turn them off if the birds aren't playing. But that's your best attractant in my eyes. I mean, is that spinning wing decoy at least shows them you're there. And then if you are finding the birds are stale on spinners, you can always turn it off for the remote.
Yeah.
Or, let it keep running. And then get silhouettes, if you're going to end up field hunting. Get like a gear down blind because they're cheap. They're like 100, I don't know what the gear down blind is now, like $140 or something like that. And you can stubble that up. It's a low profile deal. And, a bunch of the Dakota decoy silhouettes, and like you're set for a field, man. You can hunt a field pretty cheap with that setup.
Yeah. All right. On the water, you kind of brought it up. Splashers, spinners are the go-to, right?
I love splashing decoys. I love them. They're expensive, right? So it's kind of a money game on that. Like, if you got the money to buy a bunch of splashing decoys, do it. Because you go look at a slough in South Dakota in October, and you look at a small slough with 100 gadwall on it, half of them are butts up kicking feet. I mean, there's a lot of splashing going on out there. But bang for their buck, spinners are more effective, right? Because you can use them in a field or on water. And they're just like more visible. It takes more splashers to get the same visibility of, let's say, 2 spinners or 3 spinners. So I don't know. I think you got to have both. But if I was gonna, let's say I had, like, money's no object, cost is no object, and I could go hunt with 20 spinners on water or 20 splashers on water, I'd choose the splashers. That natural splashing on the water is killer, dude. But that's,
you have to have more splashers to make it effective. Is that what you're saying?
yeah.
Okay.
I think so. That's my opinion.
All right. Next question would be, with those spinners, do you get the ones that are floating on the water, or do you get the ones that are on a stake?
See, I personally, that's actually a really good question, because we were just talking about this last week. I've always just pushed my ones on the stake down till they're right above the water, right? And that's always been good enough. That being said, hunting in the mountains and hunting in like the super rocky rivers, like I was hunting the Snake River a couple weeks ago, when you're hunting the snake, there's nowhere to get a pole in the ground. It's all just river rock. So the floating spinner is like super valuable there. So I just kind of guess it depends what environment you're hunting. If you're hunting a river rock type environment a lot, dude, I'd get the floating spinners.
Yep. Now, a lot of the floaters you can put on a pole of some sort, right? There's pole attachments.
I don't know about that one. I don't think so on that one. But you know, if you're putting it on a pole, I mean, if you got a floating spinner and you hunt water most of the time, like you should never need to put it on a pole. The only time you'd want to put it on a pole is, dude, that's an interesting argument or like conversation for me. Is some guys love super tall spinner poles.
That's exactly where I was about to go
Not
to.
for me.
No, I love mine.
What do you think?
I like mine close to the water. Now,
Me too.
Now I'm gonna caveat that. Every year there's like 3 or 4 groups that hunt kind of the same little marsh, and it's like the best marsh in the area. Like you're driving pretty far to get outside from here, and every year I'll kind of see what everyone else is doing, and I'll do the fucking opposite. I'll be like, oh, you guys are going high, I'm going low, right? Because if there's 2 or 3 groups and they make a couple mistakes, I'll try and like hunt clean as possible and do the opposite of them and look a bit more different, right? But I do prefer the floaters. I prefer them kind of low down in the water level. Personally, that's just, especially.
Yeah, man, I'm the same way as you on that. I do have caveats as well. Like early in the season, if I'm hunting a big, like tall cattail marsh, say cattails are 7-8 foot tall.
Yeah,
I will try to get 1 or 2 up high if I'm in a small hole where teal can see, because they just want to buzz those spinners. So in that environment, I do like to get a couple up high. But a point I always bring up with spinners is that to me, they are a wall that the ducks won't come past. So you want your tall spinners to be closest to you and your short spinners to be farther from you, for me, generally speaking. Because if your farthest out spinner is on a 15-foot pole, most of the time, the ducks aren't going to come past that. So you're kind of naturally hanging up your ducks farther behind, like farther back and farther up than you would want. So I generally like my spinners closer and lower. But then maybe a couple of the close ones are a little taller than the farthest downwind ones. But I don't know, man. There's a great, like, everyone's got their takes. I've got a few things that I'm like, they're laws of nature for me. They're like, they're things that like I absolutely won't do in a hunt. But everyone kind of has their own opinion. There's a guy in Iowa named Art Rice, and dude, he's like a larger than life story guy. I never got to meet him. I've just only kind of heard stories. He's one of those local legend guys. He hunted an area called Lake Odessa in Iowa, and like what I've heard, so he had one arm, first off, which is crazy enough that he's out there banging at ducks with one arm. But he would set up 25 spinners every morning, and he had poles from 20 foot tall all the way down to right on top of the water tall. And he'd put out 25 spinners on a varying pole heights from 20 feet down to 2 inches every morning.
Jesus.
And yeah. And so there's guys like that. I would never do that. I mean, maybe I would try it, but like that's not my go-to method, but that was his. So I don't know. You know, everyone's got their own thing.
Wow. So I guess the next question would be, do you like the intermittent or the balls to the wall, just keeping that thing running full tilt?
Keep it running. Keep it running for me, man. That, dude, I feel like the timer mode can spook them. That's always my concern.
Yeah.
It's like, let's say they're about to finish, they're at 40 yards, then all of a sudden that timer kicks on. That's always my concern. Is all of a sudden that timer kicks on when it was off. They're about to finish, and all of a sudden there's whoosh, flashing in front of them. Yeah, I personally just like it stayed on, but that's me.
See, I like my floaters to have that, the intermittent, because it in my
Okay.
head, I'm like, okay, if there's a bird on the water and they're just like doing that whole
Just
stretching
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
they do that. But the ones
Mhm.
up, if they're up high, they're on full blast. Like,
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that thinking.
yeah,
That's natural.
I don't know, maybe that's just me being stupid, but
No, I don't
it
think that's being stupid at all, man.
yeah.
I think the more we can mimic the real stuff, the more we'll find success. That's
Mhm.
not to give myself away, but that's a thing that I'm gonna do this fall. Is I'm gonna take like I haven't decided how many yet, but I'm gonna take like 20 of our splashing duck. That's the Lucky Duck agitator, and I'm gonna go put just 20 of them on a slew for gadwall widgeon or whatever, because that's something you see all the time.
Yeah.
It's like a small 20, 30 ducks sitting there splashing, and every
Mhm.
other duck around just sucks right to them.
Yeah.
But I don't see any other guys going and hunt like that, so I want to see how it works.
Man, should I cut that out of this episode? What if the millions of
No,
followers,
no,
you know what I mean? Like
let them try it, man. I want to see someone else do it.
yeah.
That is a interesting. That is way more where my mind has gotten with waterfowl over recent years, and maybe it's because I'm spoiled and I've gotten to shoot a lot of birds.
Mhm.
It's not as much about being successful now as it is about the way I am successful, right?
Mhm.
Like, I would rather shoot 10 ducks doing something entirely unique and different that I've never done before, or hunting a new place, than shoot 30 ducks the same way I've always killed 30 ducks.
Mhm. And
Um,
so I was late to coming into the waterfowl.
mhm.
Like I didn't hunt as a kid. Sorry, I didn't hunt in the legal traditional sense growing up, right? Um,
Yeah.
and then finally someone introduced me to waterfowl in my mid-20s, and I was like, this is awesome. Like, this is what I want to do. And lately it's become more about, I'll go and sit and watch a pond of ducks and see what they're doing and
Yeah.
learn. And then even the
Mhm.
scouting, like when I'm taking a new person out that shows a big interest in hunting, maybe it's my bad attitude, but if they're like, hey, if they're not willing to come in and scout and see why I'm scouting, it's kind of like, man, you're missing the point.
You're missing the point.
Like
Yeah,
what
that's a like thing that people ask me all the time if I would ever get back into guiding. And if I ever did, it would be because I want to show people the whole experience. Like, I wouldn't have a turnkey operation where guys show up the night before at 10 p.m., they get a whiskey, then they go to bed, they wake up, shoot their ducks, then go screw around all day. I would want it to be the whole dang thing. They come scouting with me. They learn how I knock on doors. They learn how I use OnX. They learn how to cook the birds. They learn how to legally transport the birds. They learn the whole thing that I do as a freelancer,
mm-hmm.
but just from a like outfitted capacity. More creating like a freelance waterfowl experience rather than a actual just guided outfit. And it would not be for most guys. Most guys would be
No.
like, screw that,
Yeah.
dude. I don't want to do that. But then they probably wouldn't love how I do it anyway.
But I think that you would see more people learning and getting into it easier if that happened. Like, this would go back to the very start when we're talking about like identifying the ducks, right? If you go out and you
Yeah.
scout and you see, holy shit, I got 4 flocks of mallards there, you're going to get into some mallards. So then when they're flying, you can kind of, okay, that's kind of what mallards look like, even if they don't come in. But if you're out there the next day and it's like, oh, there's birds flying, they could be bluebills. Well, no, we didn't scout a single bluebill yesterday, right? There's way
Yeah.
more to this scouting than just going out. Yeah, there's where the birds are. Let's go. No, you can see like where they're swimming, what they're doing, what species they are, and people just aren't getting that right now. Like, that's kind of a
Yeah.
missing link I found, right? So
this October, like we had shot a gadwall widgeon pond and crushed them, and it was great. And then we went and hunted like a mallard feed, kind of. We got permission for the bean field next to a cornfield, and same deal, like crushed them. And we were like, well, let's like do something different the next day, right? We were already shooting birds well. And so the next day we were like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go purposely target canvasbacks. We drove around and scouted, a couple 100 miles until we finally found like a good canvasback spot and crushed
Now, you talk about using Onyx. And up here, we don't have Onyx in the sense that you guys have. We don't have like, we have different apps, and they kind of, you might as well just use Google Earth, I find, right? How do you use that Onyx down there? Like, is there more to it than just Google Earth?
Yeah, man, the value of Onyx down here is like it's hard to explain just how valuable it is for us, because it gives us all the landowner information, right?
Mhm.
And it also is my catalog of past experiences. So like I'll know that this specific spot was holding a big snow goose feed 3 years ago, right? Or I'll know this slough had a bunch of widgeon and gadwall eating coontail off this island 2 years ago, right? And so you build this like catalog of knowledge, and landowners that say yes, landowners that say no, what the waterfowl do in certain areas, even time of year, right? Don't get me wrong, you can create that catalog of information yourself outside of Onyx,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not the convenience of just like opening the same app and having it all right there.
Yeah. One of my good buddies.
Onyx is wild. It's, it's got how many states and how many places over years and years and years.
Yeah. The biggest reason I brought it up was because I want them to start, working on my area. But hopefully soon. But no, just like you were saying, I got a buddy up here, Brendan. He's been on the show, and he writes down like when he finds the first bird, and he's got a little pond, and he'll catalog, handwritten journal. Okay, we saw the first pintail, we saw the first whatever, and he has it, and then he can look back. Okay, last year the first one I saw was this date, and it's pretty neat the amount of work he's putting in to see that. Right.
That's super cool and
Oh, yeah.
super valuable to do. And like, I respect the heck out of that. He does that for himself. Truth is, like 7 years ago, like I wasn't like anti Onyx, but I was kind of jaded about Onyx because they didn't have any of the landowners and counties around here. I was like, well, why would I pay for it? And we just always had to use like county plat books that you could go buy for whatever, $40. And then now, once they started adding all the South Dakota counties, and now pretty much everywhere in the US, geez, dude, like I can't live without it. I use it even when it's not hunting season. So
Oh,
yeah, I mean, I use it for everything. I use it for like sending buddies like where I'm fishing, or even like line distance stuff, like how far is it to hike from point A to point B,
Mhm.
or marking mushroom spots, or things like that. And just like,
Yeah.
you get kind of addicted to using it.
Yeah, and I could see it being beneficial for like a big guiding company. Like this season, every year we do a hunt camp, and we try and just bring a whole bunch of people together, and we facilitate. We're not guides. We just facilitate these people hunting together and having a good time, right?
Yeah.
And the guy that kind of runs it all, he's like, "Hey, do you have, I think it's called iHunter up here." He's like, "Do you have iHunter?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Well, get it. And the field that you guys are going to be hunting in, I'll send you the pin, and then you know where to go." And I was like, "Oh, sure." So then I could go out and I could scout it the night before, knew exactly where it was. On iHunter, I just clicked the pin that he sent me, and I said, GPS there. Drove out. I could see it the night before, and like I'm sure Onyx does all that same stuff too. So I could see the benefits of this technology for that kind of stuff too, right? So
Yeah,
it's good. So anyway, buddy, I don't want to keep you too long because I know that there's a Super Bowl coming up today, and you're probably wanting to get into her a little bit and have a little party.
Whatever, man. We can talk as short as long as you want. But
no, actually, you know what? One more thing that I want to talk about. You're going to NWTF this weekend or next weekend, I guess, right?
Yep.
So, and I went right before COVID. I went the last year that they hosted it before COVID happened, and I was blown away. It's a crazy place, and I was like, I'm big into turkey hunting. I love turkey hunting, but that's a spring thing. And when I went there, and you could see all the like the duck call competition and the goose call competition, and some of these it is not just turkeys, is it?
No, not at all, man. It's become, I would just say it's like the hunting expo of the Southeast at this point,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's now it like seems to get people real pumped because it's right before turkey hunting gets big. And obviously the Southeast is obsessed with turkey hunting.
Yep.
That's their Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
It's like turkey
Yeah.
season. So
I was gonna head out this year, but didn't get the time off work. Still thinking I might run down for a day anyway, but especially
yeah.
now they're bringing out that Mr. Fox turkey vest. I don't know if you saw that, the mossy oak one.
No, I didn't see that.
That thing looks pretty sharp, and it comes with a box of like it'll be limited edition numbered. Yeah.
Oh,
it
no
looks
kidding.
pretty. I guess this year's the 50th anniversary of it, of NWTF,
Got
of
it.
the show.
Got
So I
it.
think they're doing a bunch of special stuff. So
It should be a sweet deal this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know when this episode's coming out, but if it comes out before I'm down there, people should swing by, say hi at the Lucky Duck booth.
Yeah. Maybe I'll post it on Thursday and then people can see it. And yeah. Lucky Duck's there. When I was there was like gun companies, choke companies,
Yeah, there's everything.
Everything. You think about it, like there, even a lot of the like clothing companies have their displays, and it's not just about turkeys. So if you're a duck hunter, duck enthusiast, go check it out. See some of these calls.
And I would actually say, man, like for turkey hunters, duck hunters, and predator hunters, all like one of the coolest things you got to check out that like Lucky Duck has done is, so we've got a line of predator calls, electronic predator calls, and they've got these raccoon fight sounds on them. And I tell you what, you want to go down a rabbit hole, you go down the rabbit hole of seeing how many raccoons are on the prairie that didn't historically live on the prairie. Specifically, anywhere from Saskatchewan all the way down to the south central US. They're rough on eggs. They're like the explosion of mesopredators in North America, mid-sized predators, skunks, badgers, raccoons, has been really hard on ground nesting birds. And they're seeing this in turkey hunting or turkey research. They're seeing this in quail. They're seeing this in especially ducks. One of the things that is the most fun you can have with your pants on is calling raccoons. If you have not seen this, man, I'll send you a video. So you play these raccoon fights sounds wherever, you would think there'd be raccoons, old dead hollowed out trees or abandoned houses or culverts. You have it. Those raccoons come running at you like a freaking grizzly bear. I am not kidding. They full on bear hug tackle that call when they come running up to it, like to fight another raccoon. And it's fun. It's a thing to do with like people that don't, like kids, right? That like frankly want to pull the trigger. Mm-hmm. And dude, if you have CRP or some kind of like nesting area that you want to protect and weed out some predators around, it's a fun way to do it if you don't have the time to run a trap line.
See, I didn't know that Lucky Duck was making those predator call. I've always used different companies, and
the Fox Pro,
yeah, and yep. Call in a couple coyotes, and there I've done my benefit. And that's another thing that we've never really touched on our podcast is like taking care of these predators that go after the eggs and go after birds, right? Like
so don't get me wrong, like I like coyote hunting. I see the value in coyote hunting, but the more and more I talk to the guys at Delta Waterfowl and see the research they're doing, the more you kind of find that the real threat to these ground nesting birds is like skunks and raccoons, especially raccoons, man. They're kind of like public enemy number one on eggs.
Really?
Is raccoons. Yeah, like way more than coyotes. They're way harder on nests and nest productivity than coyotes. And yeah, the Fox Pro is a great product too. I ran the Fox Pro for years, but so we've got a guy named Rick Paulette making our sounds, and you can do some Googling on it. Like, he's just killing it with making these sounds. And dude, the amount of raccoons guys can shoot in a night, or even during the day. I mean, do it during the day all the time with this sound. It's like the second you turn it on, you better have that gun to your shoulder because they're coming out of that tree.
Man,
it's cool.
I want to order one now because the farm that I mainly hunt turkeys on is just covered in raccoons, and there's like a little like it's just a storage shed. There's an abandoned house on the thing. I can't deer hunt there because all the fucking poachers come up and they're driving down the highway, and there's an abandoned house. I can hunt here. And then the amount of times I've almost gotten into fights with these fuckers. But anyway,
is the abandoned house got like windows and everything knocked out?
Oh, they're all smashed out. There's coyotes living in that thing, right?
Yeah, you would call so many raccoons out of that thing.
I am definitely hitting you up for one of those calls. Like, this is gonna be.
We got to do that.
You should just come up. We'll just spend a day like shooting raccoons.
Dude, it's something special. I'll send you a video of it. You're gonna be addicted.
Oh no, this isn't good. My wife's gonna be pissed. Man,
I just something to do in the off season.
Yeah, I just read they just closed the airspace at my place right now for another unidentified object. What the fuck is going on? Like,
dude, I don't know. This podcast might be one of those things that they like loop back in hindsight when they make a documentary later of people going like, what was going on?
Yeah, like, right. Like, my buddy just like from the fire department, he just sent me a message that they're closing the airspace around where we live, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And like, yeah, another unidentified object. And like at first,
dude, they just closed it over Havre, Montana yesterday, and then I saw Lake Michigan here like an hour ago.
Yeah, so that the Lake Michigan is now, there's one up this way too.
Drifted up to you, huh?
Like at first I was thinking like, oh, this is just like a Super Bowl ad, and like, you know, the halftime show, there's going to be like all these floating discs, and then Rihanna's going to jump out and boom, like, we got
Rihanna's alien tour.
Yeah, like some Simpson shit going on, you know, but yeah, whatever, who knows. So no, anyway, man, I appreciate your time, and I'm gonna go see what the fuck's going on with this UFO and maybe get some guns loaded. I don't know.
Yeah, just finger shoot it down.
Yeah,
got them.
Well, that's
got like your first alien bag limit.
Yeah, right. Like,
can we get tiered licenses on aliens?
Yeah. Well, when I saw that balloon that was going over the states, and then you're thinking, I'm looking at some of the states that it's supposed to be going over, and I'm thinking, how many fuckers are sitting there with a case of beer trying to take shots at it, right? Like, if I lead...
Yeah, they got their 50 BMG, seeing if they can pop it.
Like, wonder how far I have to lead this thing, you know. Hey, Ma, I got myself a balloon.
Yeah, so, especially when it drifts over Kentucky. It's like, there's a lot of shooting going on.
Yeah, no. Anything else you want to say? Or I guess you kind of already said it, like, if any about NWTF next weekend. So
yeah, man, if people are around, come say hi. Love meeting people. So
yeah, sounds good.
We'll talk again soon, man.
I appreciate it, buddy. And maybe after NWTF we'll have another talk. And
yeah, we'll talk about you shooting some raccoons sometime.
Oh man, I'm definitely going to be doing this. Like, I got to find out. You got to send me which lucky duck to buy there, which raccoon sound. This is going to be. I'm going to film that. This
done deal.
This sounds ridiculous. All right, thanks a lot, man.
We'll talk to you later, Dave.